Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button because today we're exploring one of the most fundamental questions about the human experience. Why do we feel anxiety in the first place? And I mean really, why does this uncomfortable, sometimes debilitating emotion even exist? If anxiety makes us feel terrible, interferes with our lives, and causes so much suffering, it seems like a cruel design flaw, right? Anxiety isn't a malfunction or a mistake. It's actually one of the most important survival mechanisms that humans have ever developed. The problem is that the anxiety system that kept our ancestors alive is now operating in a completely different world, responding to completely different threats, and often working against us rather than for us. So today we're diving deep into the evolutionary origins of anxiety, what purpose it serves, why it's so powerful, how it works in your brain and body, and why understanding this can actually help you manage anxiety more effectively. Our ancestors faced constant physical threats, predators, hostile environments, food scarcity, injury, disease, rival groups. Carefree ones who assumed everything would be fine. They were the worried ones, the hypervigilant ones. The ones who constantly scan for danger and assume the worst until proven otherwise. Think about it. If you were walking through the forest and you see a shape in the bushes, you have two options. Option 1. Assume it's nothing, stay calm, keep walking. Option 2. Assume it might be a predator, feel fear, prepare to run or fight. Now, if the shape turns out to be just a bush, the anxious person wasted some energy on a false alarm, but is otherwise fine. But if the shape is actually a tiger, the relaxed person is dead, while the anxious person survives. This is called the smoke detector principle. It's better to have too many false alarms than to miss one real threat. Natural selection heavily favored anxious, threat-sensitive brains because the cost of missing a real danger. This is why anxiety feels so powerful and so automatic. It's millions of years of evolutionary programming, telling you to pay attention to potential danger, and that programming runs deep in your nervous system. Now let's talk about what anxiety actually is from a functional perspective, because understanding its purpose helps explain why it feels the way it does. Anxiety is essentially your brain's prediction and preparation system for future threats. It's forward-looking fear, while fear responds to present, immediate danger. The tiger is attacking you right now. Anxiety's job is to help you predict threats before they materialize, prepare responses in advance, avoid dangerous situations, and stay vigilant to early warning signs. In the ancestral environment, this was incredibly adaptive. Anxiety helped you plan for winter by worrying about food scarcity. Anxiety is what made you check that the shelter was secure, remember which plants were poisonous, and stay cautious around strangers who might be hostile. The anxious brain is a planning brain, a preparing brain, a survival brain. The problem is that the modern world has changed dramatically, but our anxiety system hasn't updated its software. We're no longer facing predators and immediate physical threats on a daily basis. But our anxiety system still operates as if we are. And worse, the types of threats we face now: social rejection, financial insecurity, career pressure, health concerns, existential uncertainty are exactly the kinds of ambiguous, prolonged, uncontrollable situations that trigger anxiety most intensely. Physical threats that you can run from or fight, not for chronic psychological stressors that have no clear solution. Let's dive into the neuroscience of anxiety, because understanding what's happening in your brain illuminates why anxiety feels the way it does. The central player in anxiety is the amygdala, an almond-shaped structure deep in your brain that serves as your threat detection and alarm system. The amygdala is constantly scanning your environment, both external and internal, for potential threats. It processes sensory information incredibly quickly, often triggering fear responses before your conscious thinking brain even knows what's happening. When your amygdala detects a potential threat, it triggers a cascade of responses through the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. releasing stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline that prepare your body for action. Your heart rate increases, breathing quickens, muscles tense, digestion slows, and your mind becomes hyper-alert. This is the classic fight or flight response, and is the physical foundation of how anxiety feels in your body. The amygdala is designed to be hypersensitive. It is literally better at detecting threats than the rest of your brain is at dismissing them. False positives, seeing threat where there is none, are annoying but safe, while false negatives, missing a real threat, are deadly. So your amygdala has a hair trigger and is constantly shouting possible danger, while your prefrontal cortex, the rational, thinking part of your brain, tries to evaluate whether the threat is real. In people with anxiety disorders, this system is even more sensitive. The amygdala is hyperactive, and the prefrontal cortex has less ability to regulate it. But even in people without diagnosed anxiety, this system is biased toward detecting and responding to negative information over positive information, which is why we naturally focus more on what could go wrong than what could go right. There is also the role of memory in anxiety, and this is crucial. Your brain keeps detailed records of things that were threatening or dangerous in the past, and it uses these memories to predict future threats. This is adaptive. If you got food poisoning from a certain food, your brain should remember that and make you anxious about eating it again. But this system can also go haywire. If you had a panic attack in a certain situation, your brain may code that situation as dangerous, even though the situation itself wasn't the problem. If you experienced social rejection or humiliation, your brain might generalize that into anxiety about all social situations. Your memory system is essentially creating a threat map based on past experiences, but it often overgeneralizes, creating anxiety in safe situations that merely resemble past negative experiences. This is classical conditioning at work. Your brain has associated certain cues or contexts with danger, and now those cues trigger anxiety automatically. Let's talk about uncertainty, because this is perhaps the most fundamental trigger for anxiety. Humans have an extremely low tolerance for uncertainty, and this is deeply rooted in how our brains work. Uncertainty means unpredictability, and unpredictability means you can't plan, prepare, or control outcomes. For our ancestors, uncertainty was genuinely dangerous, not knowing where food would come from. So our brains evolved to crave certainty and predictability, and to respond to uncertainty with anxiety as a motivator to gather more information, prepare for multiple scenarios, and reduce the unknown. The problem is that modern life is saturated with uncertainty in ways that our ancestors never experienced. We face career uncertainty, relationship uncertainty, health uncertainty, financial uncertainty, global uncertainty. And most of this uncertainty can't be resolved through the actions that anxiety motivates. No amount of worrying tells you whether you'll get the job, whether your relationship will last, or whether you'll stay healthy. But your brain keeps trying to eliminate uncertainty through anxious rumination, mentally simulating scenarios, and seeking reassurance, even though these behaviors don't actually create the certainty your brain craves. This is why anxiety can feel so relentless. You're trying to solve an unsolvable problem, which just generates more anxiety. Now let's discuss the social dimension of anxiety, because humans are inherently social creatures, and social threats activate our anxiety system just as powerfully as physical threats. For our ancestors, being rejected from the social group was often a death sentence. You couldn't survive alone in that environment. So we evolved powerful anxiety responses to social evaluation, rejection, exclusion, or disapproval. Social anxiety, performance anxiety, fear of judgment, these aren't modern neuroses, they're ancient survival mechanisms. Your brain treats social rejection as a genuine threat to survival because historically it was. This is why public speaking can feel as scary as facing physical danger. Your amygdala is responding to the threat of social judgment with the same intensity it would respond to a predator. Your rational brain knows that giving a presentation won't kill you, But your amygdala is operating on older programming where social failure could genuinely threaten your survival. And this is important to understand because it reveals that anxiety isn't just about suffering, it is actually trying to help you, even when it's unhelpful. Anxiety motivates action. It pushes you to prepare for the exam, to address the problem, to plan ahead, to pay attention to important things. In optimal doses, anxiety enhances performance, sharpens focus, and drives productive behavior. This is why we often procrastinate on things that do make us anxious. The anxiety is actually what mobilizes us. The problem is when anxiety becomes excessive or misdirected, motivating avoidance instead of action, or when it persists even after you've taken all possible actions. Anxiety is also a signal that something needs attention. It's your internal alarm system saying this matters. Pay attention, something here is important or potentially threatening. Sometimes the signal is accurate and useful. Other times, the signal is a false alarm or massively disproportionate to actual threat. But understanding that anxiety is trying to protect you, not torture you, can change your relationship with it. Let's talk about individual differences in anxiety, because not everyone experiences the same level of anxiety, and this variation comes from multiple factors. Genetics play a significant role. You can inherit a more sensitive amygdala. Differences in neurotransmitter systems like serotonin and GABA, or temperamental traits like behavioral inhibition that predispose you to higher anxiety. Early childhood experiences shape your anxiety system profoundly. If you grew up in an unpredictable, unsafe, or invalidating environment, your threat detection system often becomes hyperactive. Attachment patterns influence anxiety. Anxious attachment styles developed in response to inconsistent caregiving create ongoing anxiety about relationships and abandonment. Traumatic experiences can fundamentally alter how your anxiety system functions, making you hypervigilant and reactive to perceived threats. And even current life circumstances matter. Chronic stress, major life changes, or ongoing uncertainty can keep your anxiety system activated. Personality traits like perfectionism, need for control, or neuroticism correlate with higher anxiety. So anxiety is shaped by the interaction of biological predisposition, developmental experiences, and current context. Some people have naturally more sensitive anxiety systems through no fault of their own. And understanding this can reduce self-blame and shame. Now here's the crucial question. If anxiety is an evolutionary adaptation, if it served important purposes for our ancestors, why does it cause so much dysfunction now? The answer is that we're experiencing an evolutionary mismatch. Our anxiety system evolved for a world of acute, identifiable, physical threats that could be addressed through action. You see the predator, you run, threat over, anxiety resolves. But modern threats are chronic, ambiguous, and psychological. You can't run from career insecurity or punch your financial worries. Your anxiety system activates but has no productive outlet, so it just keeps running. Additionally, the sheer volume of potential threats we're exposed to through media, news, social comparison, and global connectivity overwhelms a system that evolved to deal with local immediate concerns. Your anxiety system is processing threats on a global scale that it was never designed to handle. And many modern triggers, social media, performance pressure, existential uncertainty, are novel in evolutionary terms, meaning we haven't had time to adapt our responses to them. So we're running ancient software on modern hardware, and the mismatch creates a lot of suffering. So what do we do with this understanding? First, recognize that your anxiety isn't a personal failing or weakness, is an overzealous security system that is trying to protect you using outdated threat assessments. You can appreciate that anxiety has good intentions keeping you safe, even while recognizing that its methods are often counterproductive in modern contexts. Second, understand that you can't eliminate anxiety entirely, nor should you want to. Some anxiety is adaptive and necessary. The goal is to recalibrate the system to help your brain distinguish between real threats that deserve anxiety and false alarms that don't. Third, work with your anxiety rather than against it. Trying to suppress or fight anxiety often makes it worse. Instead, acknowledge it. My amygdala thinks there's danger here. Evaluate whether the threat is real and proportional. Is this actually dangerous or just uncertain? And choose your response consciously rather than automatically reacting. Fourth, build your tolerance for uncertainty. Because much of modern anxiety stems from intolerance of not knowing how things will turn out. Practice sitting with uncertainty in small doses, reminding yourself that uncertainty doesn't equal danger. And fifth, if anxiety is significantly impacting your life, seek professional help. Therapy, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy, can help retrain your anxiety responses, and medication can help regulate the underlying neurobiology when needed. Anxiety disorders are highly treatable. And understanding the evolutionary roots doesn't mean you have to accept dysfunction. If this video helped you understand why we feel anxiety, please give it a thumbs up and share it. Drop a comment. Does understanding the evolutionary purpose of anxiety change how you relate to it? And remember, anxiety is part of being human. It served crucial purposes in our evolution. And while it can be uncomfortable or excessive, it's fundamentally trying to keep you safe in the only way it knows how. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.